Delicate Subject, Chapter 38. Jane had a great deal of thinking to do on their way to Rannoch. They were going to pick up more interface pods, check in with Tally and the other admirals, tour the location where Tally planned on building a home with Cal. Jane was going to dedicate resources and defense coordination with the Geth fleet, making a full show of official support through presence and direct involvement. They could all use a boost of survey and cooperation and new growth instead of horror and destruction. The Geth were slowly cleaning up bits and pieces and outliers, bringing in rogue ships. Legion also had to carefully coordinate extraction in areas that were more highly populated, where it was possible the Geth would be fired on by any number of allegiances, including Alliance. Stealth was required because it was too much to ask that they could open a channel and communicate. That was one of the essential issues she faced. Too little time. No ability to coordinate amid fear and mistrust. Reaching out could result in mutual annihilation. Garrus let Jane know that Tally had chosen Cal. Garrus had chosen Jane and Thane. Garrus and Tally's relationship had been potentially romantic, but ultimately platonic. They were both happy with how things had worked out. Cal was aware that Tally and Garrus were close friends and had love between them, and he understood. Cal drew the line at nights spent together because that was his earned right. Garrus assured Jane there would be no awkwardness and nobody had demanded the night together thing, only laughed. Garrus had informed Jane he expected to go. He wanted to see Rannoch. Tally had talked about it so much. Jane was contemplating the utility of Javik. Although she'd originally written him off as only arrogance, the extent of his ability to physiologically pick up accurate and actionable information by touch was certainly unique. She might not have figured out how it was of use, but Reapers had. Who was coordinating indoctrinated ships and sending them to destinations with missions? There was some despair on the subject. Should she spend resources going after a figurehead when their particular talents or goals could be replaced easily through indoctrination? Saren had been a Spectre, high-value target, capable and able to act in the shadows and without consequence. Tim had been highly intelligent and with a massive set of resources. Considering either of them as insignificant and replaceable would have been disastrous. It was of value to try to find the next figurehead to take down, and that might be a viable strategy. Take down infrastructure, convert infrastructure to her needs. Her ultimate needs were offense and defense, but it could not be done through conventional means. The information they'd gained from the collector base had indicated overwhelming force and technology. She needed a fleet of medical ships with brigs for holding and medical facilities for surgery and recovery and rehabilitation. Then she needed ships with military training facilities and ships that were hardened and prepared military for assault and defense. She needed more ships with stealth drives. If she was going to go with building the Crucible, she had to start now, and she could not relinquish control. Once again, for caution and prediction reasons, the Alliance, Thessia, and Palaven could be counted on, only to a point. Beyond a certain brittle extent of cost and sacrifice, her personal indoctrination would dictate her being locked out of certain projects, or being given certain resources. She'd already been marginalized without her indoctrination due to her death, association with Cerberus, and tendency to say and do unexpected, unwelcome, and expensive things. She had to plan for that asterisk. It would be lovely if she could, just in this case, disqualify herself from this struggle and head to some deserted planet, dig a deep hole, and live there for the next 100 years. She had fewer choices than she thought. She could not pick and choose certain projects based on her resources. For it all to work, she had to get them up and running simultaneously, without leak, without failure, while gathering resources and intel. She dearly wished Thane were here again. She needed his calm and influence, his unerring sense of route and method. On reflection, Javik would be able to gather intelligence in ways that were impossible otherwise. Unfortunately, perhaps only Reapers could have forced him to do that. She was unable and unwilling to ask him to directly interpret through touch for her when he'd volunteered, essentially, to drive a gun and nothing else. She'd need to build trust and a commander-to-subordinate relationship and not be maneuvered into asking for favors. She would really like to keep it detached and professional and not have to sleep with a Prothean. Yeah, she'd do anything for her cause, but she still had some choices, and she would protect them. Liara attempted to chip away at Javik slowly, and he cooperated, though it bored him, revealing seemingly unrelated and possibly irrelevant things about Prothean culture. His attention was on the fight with the Reapers, and he was antagonized somewhat by identifying Prothean salt shakers and the like. Jane also imagined he did not like to have his ignorance of Protheans shown. To many questions he did not have the answers. Whether or not that was sullen intransigence or simple truth was hard to discern. Jane stayed out of his way, and fortunately, he did not seek her out, did not press her, and at least dealt with Liara with more grace, if not more patience, than he had at first. Jane had to be content that she had denied Reapers a prize whose value she could not foresee at the moment. Perhaps she'd miss it entirely, as she had almost passed over putting David Archer and Legion together in a room. Javik was a source of shipwide fascination. Jane herself was at turns fascinated and repelled. He seemed to accept his place, fortunately, and caused no disruption. Despite his early and emphatic interest, she would have to rely on the idea that if he had gained that information, he had gained the knowledge that she was stubborn herself and would not take well to being accosted, or whatever the equivalent of a Prothean serenade at a balcony was. Karen was at a bit of a loss, unable to figure out some systems he had, unable to determine what readings were what. She had his assurance that he was perfectly healthy. Karen needed to know how to treat him. Fortunately, it seemed he had a levo system comparable to a human body. Medigel worked on him. Karen felt she could formulate a blood analog. She still recommended not breaking him. Next ground mission, he was going. They'd find out then if their attempts to treat him resulted in prompt death. He seemed to be able to eat and be nourished by levo food, but did not approve of any of it. Liara had said she would not leave the Normandy while Javik was there, so she was essentially no longer the shadow broker, turning over day-to-day operations to Vrayan and Farron. Jane was inclined to think Liara's questioning and attention to detail would not be wasted, and if Liara thought it was worth her time and was willing to put in the work, Jane trusted that impulse. She also sympathized with the drive of obsession and hunches. Liara had decided at one point to find Jane's body, and it had happened. Jane was not about to question how Liara spent her time. Javik, fortunately, did not go around touching people or threatening to touch people, and as this was a military crew, and he was always in full armor, the subject did not come up. He was kept busy between Liara, Karen, and Garrus. Garrus liked him. According to Garrus, Javik was an excellent shot. His biotics were appropriately devastating, and he didn't talk much other than a tendency to discuss that Taurian could be prepared in many ways. Theoretically, Garrus would be best served in a brandberry sauce, whatever that was. He asked Liara to not let Javik locate a 50,000-year-old condiment for the fun of it, and left it at that. It wasn't the worst locker room talk he'd heard. Jane scheduled some time at a pod and used her interface to feel, hear, and experience what it would be like to be able to cry, collapse, fall to her knees, and sob without fear of being observed and without risk of intrusion. It was a luxury she had gone without. Her time with Yalis and afterward with Thane had shown her the cathartic and theatrical possibilities of crying, and she indulged fully. She had an observational curiosity of what it would be to experience solitary, non-sexual, or drell, or Turian release. She was partially detached and fascinated to watch and feel crying playing out, as it would in the outside world, the internal sense of collapse, and the ultimate buoying of endorphins in the sense of passage of the storm. It was complicated and transformative enough that she vaguely thought that, yes, sex would be perfectly possible in here. She was still not interested in copyright infringement, and too embroiled in work right now to consider it other than in passing. She indulged her craving for privacy, before impossible, now promised as ironclad by David. She allowed herself to turn off notifications, tried to not allow guilt to slip in as a process, but it still did. And she felt that pushback of defiance. She soaked this in, and the vague thought of feeling childish made her decide to go all the way. She asked for David's assistance. "David, I'm going to make an odd request." "What do you require?" "I would like a room with breakable, expensive things. We're talking Fabergé eggs that shatter, some priceless things that break. Museum stuff, things I'd never be allowed to touch. I want convincing shatters, rips, tears." She grinned as the room began to fill with the pieces she requested. "Are you judging me, David?" "If I comprehend your usage of this space, it would be for expression of frustration. Though my frustration takes different forms, I certainly understand the desire to break things." "I thought you might." "I can still be regularly frustrated by my physical body, but it is also home, and I have grown to appreciate what has allowed the me out there to be the me in here. I have integrated. However, remembered or recurrent frustration will likely make me want to be effective and streamlined, after so long being trapped in relative uselessness or used for the wrong purposes. I imagine you grow weary of being effective and streamlined, and would enjoy the luxury of momentary destruction and childishness without consequence." "I hope it's that simple. I can't be destructive or childish out there, so here's my chance. Add a Mona Lisa. Nothing Drell. I'm not up to destroying Drell artifacts, but my culture is good. I have the right to be disrespectful. I never understood why the Mona Lisa was such a big deal." She had an underlying anger that so many resources went toward art when they did not go toward people. She knew that wasn't fair, but right now was not about fair and even, but her prejudices being served. She just wanted to be aware fully that there were no consequences to her actions here, and that was massively freeing. David, fortunately, did not take the moment to educate her on the cultural or aesthetic value of what was filling up the space, and she thought he went out of his way to find inexplicably overrated or ugly things that had been fawned over for no good reason throughout history. She had nothing against the art. Okay, this obviously indicated something against art, but she wasn't sure what. She just wanted... It was more about the exclusivity of bad art and the waste of attention and time, maybe. As though the Citadel were too perfect, too beautiful to abandon despite its being an insidious death trap. She could have smashed a small Citadel replica, but maybe that was too on the nose. She hefted the Fabergé egg in front of her. It was beautiful, and it made her angry. Made for an imperial family while people starved under slavery. Some art inspired her, and she would likely have stopped and wandered through the room if it had been filled with those objects, the things that expanded the mind. She'd never destroy a Rodin. This egg was a symbol to her of value and resources locked away and manipulated to provide entertainment to a very few who had earned the right by being lucky enough to be born royal. She picked up the egg, hefted it, and threw it against a wall, ostentatiously satisfying shattering sounds. Spirits, yes. She found the less she knew about ugly things or their artistic significance, the easier it was to break them, and she enjoyed that for its additional bump of celebration of conspicuous ignorance and destruction. She broke more things than she understood, or even tried to understand, and she came to stand in front of the Mona Lisa. She looked at it for a moment and imagined raking nails through the canvas, and the destructive impulse calmed and settled. This piece had come from a brilliant, capricious mind. She knew enough about Da Vinci to pause and appreciate the mind that work came from, if not the work. If she'd been able to carry on a conversation with Da Vinci at that moment, she would have enjoyed that. And David might have even managed it. But she was going to allow brilliance and caprice to hold its historical moment without her intrusion. All the artists had tried and succeeded or failed to say something profound. And these pieces spoke to someone, somewhere, if not to her. She reset the room to make sure she could reverse what she'd done, that satisfying step, unavailable in the outside world. She looked at the restored objects with destructive impulses purged. Maybe Fabergé had no choices, and to destroy his work was an insult to what the man himself had suffered, forced to make toys for dangerous children with his genius. Maybe he'd been an insufferable asshole. It wasn't really for her to say or judge, and once again it wasn't about her, but about the flow of living dynamic character that she wished to preserve, regardless of its museums or motivations. Now the ugly seemed endearing. She called up the Library of Alexandria and chased down questions about Fabergé. I was not terribly enlightened, but did feel the burden of ignorance more heavily. Russia, a country that had adopted the habits and language of the French at court in order to appear less barbaric to the wider world. Jane found herself wanting to tell Russia to tell the rest of the world to fuck off, speak Russian, and then sympathize with the pressures that caused that change, and realize the Russian imperial family had died in the snow under gunfire. Maybe none of them had real choices. After perusing the art a bit longer, and then really not wanting to delve into more lives and consequences as a result of her supposed irresponsibility spree when she should be focusing, she changed the template to darkness with just local illumination. On a sudden impulse, she opened just a voice channel to Vrayan. Jane said, "Hey." There was some hesitation and then a returning, eerie sound. Her voice, slightly different, but the same inflection, like a frosted mirror. "Hey? Got a minute?" "Sure." Jane barreled through, no real idea why she'd called. "I was thinking about you, which turned into calling you. I'm inside the Normandy's computer systems. Or my brain is. My body's outside, paralyzed, which seems appropriate. I have no real idea why I called you, but I figured you'd understand that." Liara told me about that interface thing. She's fascinated. "Do you miss her?" "Yes. She's staying, though. A real Prothean. That's her jackpot. You're welcome on the ship if you want to join her. I offered it to her. I'll offer it to you. You can stay here, or move to Eurydice, or any other of our outposts, or we can get you a new one. Any time. The Prothean himself is kind of an ass." "Thank you. I might visit. I've heard that, too, about the Prothean." "Are you okay?" I think that's my line. Yeah, I'm okay. Thinking about next steps. Jumping through hoops on fire. Business as usual. Are you okay? Yeah. What we're doing here is interesting. I'm getting a handle on being a new person. I met Thane. Briefly. He seems terrifying. Jane grinned, a warm flush to her neck. Yes, definitely that. Are you putting together a harem? No, hell no. I'm still in the who am I phase, and not so much with the who are they yet. You know the weirdest thing? What's the weirdest thing? I want to talk to Mom. I can't figure out why. Probably because I never wanted to, and now I can't. Yeah, that's one of the weirder things I've heard, but I guess it makes sense. I had thought, briefly, maybe that since I died and come back, that would make a difference. I think I even had a few seconds of that leaping, searing hope that I tried so hard to get rid of, and I thought was gone for good. I'm sorry I ruined your chances. My bet is that if I send any communication now, she'd turn it over to Alliance Command. Not that they wouldn't already have 17 copies. And try to keep up a civil conversation when what she really wants to do is cut me off entirely for having the gall to be non-alliance and being indoctrinated. She'd correspond with me to see if she could gain intelligence she could hand over. I'm guessing her main emotion would be irritation at me putting her rank at risk through association. I can send you copies of the correspondence I sent and received right after I came back, and since. She did not approve of Cerberus either, but if you want, write something. I'll send it as me. We'll see what happens. I'll think about it. It would be an interesting writing exercise. Fran said, as though she had been contacted for her shadow broker intel and not for the person she was. And Jane wasn't sure if that was what she needed to hear or not. You know you're fucked, right? Yeah, I know. You picked a side. You have to be a side. Jane closed her propriocepting eyes. Yeah, I know. Okay, we'll do everything we can from here. It's a lot. This is actually fun. I'm glad to hear it. You gonna be around for a while, or are you considering disappearing one way or the other? Dying didn't take. You'd think you for one would know better. Turns out you did. I want this fight. That's why we're doing it. If I could do it alone, I would, but it turns out I have to pick sides when I'd rather just let things fall to free will. Free will doesn't exist anymore for a lot of people. It won't if you don't move. Fast. Now. Hard. With people that used to be on your side, thinking you're their enemy. Yeah. I did that with Cerberus. I'm capable. I had hoped it would not be necessary, that we'd all pull together. But today is the conditional death of that hope and the conditional building of plans that allow me the autonomy I need. I might have been able to pull everyone together, but there's this stuff in my spine. With what I have to do, with what I want to do, the council's going to turn on me. I might even have to make a move where I clear the Citadel. I'm going to have to look for alternatives to Mass Effect relays. If I can find that, I'm going to advocate destroying them. I'm gonna look like an indoctrinated faction leader. I can't get around it. Vrain sighed, but did not sound surprised. With what Vrain had been seeing, she'd likely not had to take a terribly far ride to reach Jane's concerns. Vrain said, "The loss of the council is not that much of a loss. Although on the surface there's a muddle of motivation, I think from what I see, that people will follow you. I know you don't want that, but it isn't about want. It's about what will get things done. You've spent more time in the political arena lately. You have gravitas, and a game face, and a kick-ass dress. The council was always composed of political creatures. Money and authority can be gained in other ways. You can get around some of it, just not all of it." Jane rubbed her fake temples, and it still felt good. "Thane designed that dress. They both taught me how to dance. Now I'm learning new skills. Now I'm gonna have to learn how to be a prophet. If I create shadow organizations to do things I don't want to be seen or known to be doing, I'll still be suspected anyway because it will ultimately benefit me. I can't hide behind a spokesperson because I need to use the authority, the only authority I have, my identity. There are no factions that want to do what I want to do, and there is nothing I can do to make what I want happen without it looking radical and by association, indoctrinated. I can't afford to only make diplomatic friends slowly. Thane has been teaching me to play a drill strategy game. Pawn Aoife. He habitually kicks my ass, but without his guidance, I don't think I could do this. My brain is built differently, literally and figuratively after close contact with him. I still need to try to make diplomatic friends slowly, but I can't rely on that, and I need to make decisive moves simultaneously that may betray those diplomatic friends, at least on the surface. I have to do both, and they have to work perfectly. I don't have time. I'm afraid if I attempt to include or convince everyone, I'll diplomatically be watching the worlds burn. Let me give you an example. I truly believe, I have no doubt, you've seen enough of it to know why we hate the Citadel, Keepers, the hidden relays, all the little mysterious bits and pieces. I think it's a death trap. I can't prove it, but I want people off. If I make that a public stance, then I'm in the same boat I was when I went after Saren. I look crazy and vengeful, and I look like I've provoked an attack. I would have done better to just ignore the council, amass a force, go after Saren myself, take him down at Vermeer, and Caden. She shook her head, knowing that she did not have to explain, and that this is why this conversation was necessary. And Caden would be here. I finally did that. Went rogue, took down the collector base. Now I need to apply that to worlds and systems. I need enough force. I need enough authority. There is no other way to get that unless I take it. I have to build this super weapon thing, and it's either a huge waste of time or our salvation, and I have no idea right now. And I need wiser minds than I to make that call. I'm surrounded by the best, and I know I'm right. The question is, will I stare down the barrel of a gun if necessary and shoot a counselor in the head if they stand between me and what I need, what everyone needs? Well, at least I know I'm not indoctrinated, or else these thoughts might be a little scary, you know? You're not alone. If you make your own law, you at least have people with you who will follow you. What you've done is impressive. I think you can do it. You can leapfrog your way to an army, and maybe diplomacy becomes irrelevant because what you need and what you want, you can get for yourself. I have to. I don't see any other way. I need everything mobile, not just an army, but supply ships, farm ships, medical ships, fuel. We have Geth and now Quarians, but the council races have not experienced enough pain to plan. Jane thought that was well put, and followed up with, "This crucible thing is insane. What I want to do is insane. Even I know it. It's not going to be hard for everyone else to know it. We're reasonably good at getting fucked and getting unfucked. It'll come to you." I am so glad there are people on this ship that are much smarter than I am. I know the feeling. So we need an army, but not anywhere that can be found. We need a secret army that recruits and transports in secret. Quarians haven't had a base for a long time. Study their methods. I'm on the way to Rannoch for some tips. Not that I'm gonna announce it. I'm wondering if we can preserve life on the run. If I only had an alternative to the Mass Effect relays, I could start on shutting them down. I'd never get consent. It would be terrorism. Any infrastructure I built would rely on the relays for coordination, transportation, and communication. Even if I terrorize our asses back into the pre-FTL age, that just means the Reapers will take some more time to get here, and we'll be crippled when they do. We've relied on their infrastructure for our infrastructure. There was silence for a while, and she chewed on that. Not much more to say beyond terrorism and crippled. Vrayan asked her, "Hey, did you sleep with Farron?" "What? No. Since rebirth, only Garrus and Thane." Maybe the mom thing wasn't the weirdest. Maybe looking at people and thinking, "I wonder if I've slept with them," is the weirdest. "Prothean wants to sleep with me. Don't let him touch you. Or do, in fact, maybe talk Liara into convincing him to bring him back to you, and then all three of you can do some research." Liara's about my speed right now. My speed is slow. Is one Turian and one Drell enough for you? Yes. Not sure how much you know. Behind the scenes, personally, it's been romantic in ways where I only expected lust. There's lust, too, but Garrus and I danced before his Ava and managed to bond to Thane and me through force of will. Thane convinced the relocated Seni clan to make me a Seni gown, and we had a wrist-binding ceremony where he wore his own Seni. I have family. I'm glad. Seni? No kidding? The cursed Drell cloth? No kidding. What was being indoctrinated like? Like falling asleep when you know you need to stay awake to stay alive. Then it's a dream where you only wake for 7 seconds at a time. Where did those 7 seconds come from? Thane's skin? The Normandy's deck? Garrus's eyes? You should know. I didn't tell you at first, but now you've met Thane. You've done your own independent research. Did he bring Yalis with him? No. At least he didn't introduce us. It affects you because it happened to you. I'm assuming with David's security protocols and with your security protocols we won't be monitored. And I need to tell you, when I was indoctrinated, Yalis got me to where I told her everything. Absolutely everything. Then Thane saw the surveillance of her peeling my brain like a grape. Then they both risked their lives to destroy the records and kill everyone involved with my abduction. No records remain, but Yalis indoctrinated me, used her influence over me to create a romantic and sexual relationship. I fell in love with her hard, and from her subsequent actions, it seems she fell back. The only reason why I survived is that she gave me a chance at those 7 seconds. So I'm gonna tell you that these two people, Thane and Yalis, know you. They will not betray you. They would both follow any command you gave. I didn't earn that. We earned that. They know about Corbin. They know everything. Drell assassins seem to have a type, and we're it. I don't want to get anywhere near Yalis again, but I let her out because she can save the Drell people, and I believe she will. Thane will help. I didn't tell you because it's so fucking complicated, and trust was spare on the ground when you first woke up. If by now you're in, then you're in. You already know Garrus loves you, always will. You should know Thane loves you. Yalis loves you. They always will. If I'm gone, if you need anything, I swear by those 7 seconds, they will help and not ask for anything in return. I wasn't going to tell you, but you've met him. It matters. If your lives intersect, it matters. I trust him, and I trust in his discretion entirely, and in Yalis's, just because of who they are. They can hide it, you can hide it, but I don't want you to get blindsided. Just get used to being known to your bones, and having that be casual information not worthy of notice. There are still some things that are about us, and not about me. Okay. What does it feel like to not have Commander Shepard as part of your resume? Here, at least, it's okay. Farron, Kolyat, and Liara know, so in a way, at least I have some continuity. I didn't have to manufacture a new personality. I don't have to cover or lie. I was able to ease into full purple with help. Liara's been in my head before and since. She makes it easy. Liara knows about Corbin. I know what you mean about trust and complication. Nobody else will know. In one way, it's just another story about the Shepard legend, and for me at least, I wasn't Shepard anymore. I let it go, and I trust Liara. We trust Liara, and she trusts us. The more she knew, the better able I was to become Vrain by choice. I was able to let go of our past because I needed to invent a new one. The more time passes and the more divergence I have, the more memories I make to call my own, the steadier I feel. I meet new people that already know me. I thank you for carrying on an expectation that I should be respected by proxy. I would never have guessed that Thane was even tangentially acquainted with you. Polite, distant, very Drell. Didn't think to research him before his arrival, and then, well, interesting person. Farron and Kolyat are more like Urim, more cosmopolitan. Thane is not. Yeah, he's made of the gods and the sand of Rakana. You gonna be okay with your continuity? Yeah, I am. I'm surrounded by extraordinary people. I don't want to let them down or be shown up. I have information at my fingertips that I never would have thought possible. I feel lucky. Remember all those times we wanted to know who the Shadow Broker was and never knew? Well, ta-da! Thank you for taking my call. Thank you for letting me know who you slept with. You are very welcome. Consider that the complete list. Really? Really, despite enthusiastic Prothean, you sure you can't take him off my hands? She was getting tired. She could feel the gauge fill up, external input from her body. Hunger, need for rest, need for maintenance. She enjoyed muting it for a little while, just because she could, and then decided she had acted out enough for one day. She'd take what she'd learned in here and go apply it to reality. She was about to go take care of that, but got an incoming call from Rex. She fortunately was not all that far gone, and her gear shift took care of it. This apparently wasn't something to be discussed in a hallway. She got to the conference room before he completely lost what shreds of cool he had. The Varen-humping Solarians took potentially fertile females from Tuchanka. That whole thing with Malon's research, they took Krogan females to Surkesh, and they've had them there like lab animals. I'm about to go to war, Shepard. If that ruins your plans for galactic peace and cooperation, blame the Solarians. What's your evidence? Rex showed her a clip of surveillance of what looked like a zoo and a lab. She'd never seen a Krogan female, but that was what one probably looked like. Her jaw set, and she was icily angry. That swept away all conflict she had going. She said, "The Dalatras is impossible. I've tried to work with her, and you will be happy to know I'd side with the Krogan over her scheming ass every day." She was aware that Rex needed her help. Yes, this was friendship and trust, and she was grateful for it, but she felt the clock ease a tad when she realized he wasn't just warning her. She moved to reassure him. "Rex, I'm with you." "Good. I've got problems of my own here. I'm trying to buck all our traditions, get us to rebuild. I might want to wring the neck of every duct-rat Solarian myself, but I have my people to think about. I can't go to war. I can't risk the lives of the females in a direct assault. I figured, since you're good at getting things done." Her mind was churning over the possibilities. She did not think that even direct confrontation with Solarians or the Council would result in much other than the regrettable death of female Krogan. So she told him, "I'm glad you did, Rex. I was considering just giving up on the Krogan and going about uplifting the Yag myself." Rex laughed as she stared off for a moment, and then she asked him, "How much do you trust Paddock?" "I wouldn't have known if he hadn't contacted me. He's about the only Solarian I'm not ready to spit roast. Well, him and Morden." Morden kept Malon's research. She had blank moments, long thoughts, sitting and staring while Rex kept blessedly quiet. She thought she might have something, but it sounded reckless and dangerous. Not as reckless as a Krogan direct assault. She smiled and said, "How do you feel about Batarian slavers making off with some valuable lab equipment and zoo exhibits? Looks like I'm a pirate again." "You're gonna have to explain that one to me." "I need you to contact Paddock. He needs to disable security, but not surveillance. We can make some sort of late-night downtime raid, or whenever he can manage. He can leave with us, fake his own death. Offer him a job researching, fixing the genophage, making up for Solarian sins. I have a Batarian cruiser for bait. We can have the Normandy there, but stealth. We make a raid, look like Batarians. Paddock makes sure we can get in and out with the females. We get observed as Batarians or hire actual Batarians. Depending on pursuit, we can sacrifice the cruiser, make it look like all hands were lost. Solarians have nothing to pursue. They won't complain to the Council because they should not have a zoo in the first place. We run a con and a blow-off. We take the females to Eurydice Station, Cerberus' old base, and Morden and Paddock work on what happened and what to do. We need the genophage reversed. If Morden and Paddock can do it, I'll let them stay at Eurydice." "I'm with you there. I think you are marginally better than the Yag." "Yeah, and you're marginally better than a Solarian." "I need you I need the Krogan. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do and because I can, and I also think the genophage needs to be reversed. It's not because your people are fodder. It's because your people are people. Morden will work to reverse it. He has a phenomenal lab. Rex, I am your friend, and you know the difference between command and friendship. But I need command, friendship, and personal sacrifice from everyone. I have the Geth. I have the Quarians. I need the Krogan. Get this done, and every Krogan stands at your side. I need them now, whether or not I succeed. All I ask for now is that if it comes up that I need a Krogan raid in the same way that I need a Vakarian raid right now, that you cough up. I think Grunt would like that. I think I would like that too. I am giving you early warning. Get your people off Tuchanka. Get as many people away from populated centers as you can. Get up into ships. Get infrastructure and farms in the sky. Get fuel sources. I'm telling you directly, as the leader of the Krogan people, it is war. It's now, and we don't have any more time. All right. I can get started on that. If you have any concerns about my indoctrination, ask now. He asked her with a grin. Did it tickle? Anybody who speaks against you gets a headache or a hole. She thought of Thane's words. A mouth that moves against her loses a tongue. A hand that moves against her loses its fingers. With friends like you, Rex, we're gonna win this thing. Solarians don't live long enough to realize that intelligence is not the same as wisdom. Damn, Rex, that sounded like you're a leader. Or that I can fake it anyway. Yeah, I can do that too. Okay, you go coordinate with Paddock. I'll talk to Morden. We'll get them to safety. I'm on it. We're on it. It will stay that way. Tuchanka is with you. She had a long conference with Morden, who could directly contact Paddock without surveillance and without suspicion, and she left it to those gentlemen to hash out preliminary plans. They had to take time for planning. The females were fragile but stable, and Paddock could preserve their lives. Rex understood it would take time, and they had to set it up just right. She was very tired, but she had to do one more thing before sleeping, not because she would change her mind, but because it was impossible that Liara knew, and Garrus did not. She could not put the information straight into his mind the same way Vrayan did with Liara, but she could no longer bear excluding him from the truth, now that the pool of truth was spreading. Garrus was in her cabin, quietly working on the innards of guns. She had made sure she got a meal and a few deep breaths first. She took his hand, led him to the couch, and settled into his lap. Maybe it was in her scent. Likely the day was reflected there in chaos and flood. She leaned up to his ear and told him, "The secrets I have kept belong to you. I have not told you for so many reasons, and none of them matter any longer. Yalis knows, Thane knows, Vrayan knows. Now I know Liara knows, and it is impossible that you don't know. It's big because it defined who I am, or I have defined what it was. It's small because it's over, but it no longer belongs to just me, no matter its impact or size. I was afraid you would not understand, but I was wrong to keep it from you and count your reaction as one of my reasons. I told myself and Thane that I was doing it to protect you, and that was true, but not true. I was protecting myself, but that is now your right, something you've given without being asked. You deserve the truth. You deserve your reaction, whatever it is, What matters is that you bonded to me, and I want to honor that. You asked me for nothing, no promises, but there is a promise in the drill ceremony that I should give to you because you deserve it, even if I have not known how to give it. I unclench my fist, and the burdens within are ours, and not mine alone. You promised me no fear, no failing, no folly, and you deserve the same in return. She wanted to pull back and look in his eyes, but she was afraid she'd choke and hesitate, so she followed the downward pull of flooding truth. When I was 19, a friend of mine in school was being abused. I tried to gather intel on the man who was abusing her. I thought he would escape the law. I thought I might have to kill him. I wanted to kill him. I did not think I could prove who he was, but I knew. Once I knew, I didn't want to prove it anymore. I wanted to do it myself. I arranged for hacked evidence of me taking a trip to Mars that never existed. I stalked him. He caught me. He tied me to a bed, raped me, promised to kill me as he'd killed other women, dropped my body in a well along with them. He did not give me water or food for 4 days. On the 4th day, I got free. I sawed one of the ropes holding me apart with friction. I went back to that bed with a box cutter, and when he came back to me, when he was inside, I cut his throat. I burned down that cabin. I found the girls in the well, and I got them exhumed anonymously. All the Alliance knew was that I went AWOL. He is still listed as missing. My cover story of Mars held. It is ugly, and it is twisted, and I'm alive because of my capacity for premeditated murder. Yalis pulled every detail of this out of my head. She did it while she was my lover for what seemed like an eternity. I told her everything. I was in love with her entirely, completely in love with her. That is why I could not bear to be touched. That is why Thane thought I should kill him. Because he knew every sordid bit of shadow pulled from me against my will. The bones of my life dug up and displayed. They both offered to die to keep that information from escaping into the world. They both risked their lives to bury that truth, bury my abduction. I didn't tell you because you already understood me without need for words, but I'm telling you now because other people know, and you deserve to be one of them, have always deserved to know. You should have been the first and the only. You have always deserved my truths. It is not that you do not deserve trust. It is that I did not know how to give it. This was taken from me, but you are the first and the only person I give it to freely. Because of your patience, because of your understanding, because I want to, and not because I have to. I still don't want anybody else to know, but when we are anywhere that can't be monitored, or if we whisper, I will answer any question you ask. I promise you honesty. I'm sorry for not granting you what was yours while you gave me everything. I wish I had done this before your bond. I wish I knew how to be a better person. You deserve a woman with a cleaner past. I can't be her, but I love you, and you have always deserved better. She buried her head against his shoulder. He had begun to tremble somewhere in the middle of that. His arms tightened around her, his crest turned down to her hiding forehead. She was deeply ashamed of having to whisper, of having held herself separate. She was afraid it was too late. She was afraid she'd done it because she could not afford to think about this anymore. It was painful to think about or look at Garrus and know what she'd held back willfully. She couldn't bear that guilt. He would never have presumed to behave as though he understood. If he had died, her regret would have been infinite and crushing. She could no longer hold the center of herself without him being a part. She didn't feel brave, but penitent. She wasn't giving him something he needed. She was giving him what she needed. Still selfish. Jane, I never doubted that you trusted me. Now you never need to doubt that you trust me. You are mine. I am yours. No truth or lie, told or withheld, from the moment we chose to be together, will ever, has ever, change that. Because he said it. It was true. That's all she needed to know as she let the rest slip from her mind, attention only paid to the relief and not the cause. She lifted her head to kiss him. The looming shadow in front of them grew, and they would face that now and later. She had no more time for regrets or shadows between them in any future moments they would be lucky enough to share. She closed her eyes to bask for as long as she could in his certainty and acceptance. It was big and small, did not change the way he saw her or the way she saw herself, but it did make potentials sharpen into reality. All the possible projected shadows that had bled out from her feet, from all the angles he'd considered, all the light he had tried to shine on her to catch a glimpse of that truth, coalesced into a reality he had not imagined. It horrified him, but it was specific, could be contained, and was real and solid where there had only been darkness before. They had, could, would, face horrors together. It could be solidly in the past. All of his doubts or distance she had imagined radiating from him with a revealing of truth were simply not there, had never been there, would never be there. They could be solidly in the present. As though to prove words and the past did not matter, reaction to it was gone from him. He drew his face back, and all she saw was love in his eyes, felt the steady hold of his limbs. She was fully his. All the yes she had, nothing held back. It would not diminish trust or love, those having grown beyond the bounds of being contained through acts of will. Her telling him had been out of her control, deserved, and fated at the right time, the same way his bond had been out of his control, deserved, and fated at the right time. She had a fleeting thought that Thane would be proud of her. She was tentatively proud of herself. Garrus was clearly proud of her, but he always was. And there were the eyes that had saved her over and over with what they saw, what they said, what they meant. She had learned his body, his clothes, the way to get to him fastest. Her hands moving sure over his shoulders, smooth and sure, without catches or snags. His hands moved to her clothes, removing them whole, preserving them without tearing, with some unspoken shared urge to watch each other's eyes, see the control in each other, all the time in the world. Turian time she'd learned to keep, a reverent pace to passion. The clothes they wore at this moment were as important as Seni, as important as a bejeweled Karim dress and Turian dress uniform, the moment deserving of preservation and respect. Now, with his familiar strength, removing clothing was easy as he held himself up with one arm, held her entirely up with one arm. They shifted and slid clothing away with the satisfaction of familiarity, practice, and necessity. He watched her eyes, unless cloth was briefly in the way. He moved his thumbs to her throat, tilting her head back, teeth and tongue at her exposed skin. Her hands moved to claim scent. His teeth moved to claim blood. He was inside in a reverent, claiming, whispered ceremony and covenant. His whispered name for her was Jane, and she still had no more fitting name for him than Garrus. It suited them, illusions and shadows dispelled, holding to each other in their mortality and meaning.